The United Nations has taken a decision to drastically scale back the upcoming meeting of the Commission on the Status of Women at its headquarters in New York later this month due to the spread of the coronavirus. The annual gathering, the largest on women's rights globally, would normally see some 12,000 delegates from 193 member states descend on New York, including a large contingent from different civil society groupings. Despite efforts from some countries, including South Africa, calling for an outright postponement, the CSW Bureau has decided on holding a one-day event on March the 9th, while postponing the rest of the program until a yet-to-be-determined date.
Let us wait for the correct time. Let us not risk life, as Omar was saying, because we meet for the sake of meeting, because we have programmed it. These are extraordinary circumstances. Let's postpone this CSW until all the women can gather and review together with us what lies ahead.
To confine the meeting for a short one-day event and discourage all the delegations from the capitals from visiting the headquarters. Of course, that will be also followed by canceling all side events, ministerial roundtables, and events organized to be organized by member states and the Secretariat. And then to designate some later date, which we are not yet in a position to know when that would be, but to have a provision that the CSW will be meeting in its scheduled capacity at a later date.
All right, let's find out what this means. For more on this story, we take you to New York with the UN, or to New York in the UN, in particular with correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease will be in conversation with the Executive Director of UN Women. Sherwin?
Tepiso, it's called the Commission on the Status of Women, but essentially it's the flagship event for the United Nations entity on women, known as UN Women, and where the executive director is annually, in the 2-week period in March, literally run off her feet. But this, of course, the decision by the Bureau changes everything. So to talk us through the implications, you correctly point out, we are joined by Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Executive Director. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherwin.
So, what do you make of the Bureau's decision, and how has that impacted your organization and certainly the thousands of delegates we were expecting to arrive here in a matter of days?
Well, firstly, it's fair to say this was a responsible decision to make by the Bureau. People's health is important than anything else, but I have to tell you, it's a big blow. It's a big blow to my team. It's a big blow to delegates. It's a big blow to member states who have this year a very important celebration to mark the 25th anniversary of Beijing. We were expecting more than 100 ministers. We had registered 11,000 civil society participants. We had more than 500 side events. It's a lot of organization, and it's a lot of expenditure also that people have incurred. So I have to say, right now, we are in uncharted waters, but we understand, and I hope also the member states and the civil society participants understand that this is for the best.
I mean, I guess it's difficult to keep your eye on the ball, right? You mentioned the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform. Of course, the Beijing Platform of Action was adopted at the 4th World Women's Conference 25 years ago. It's the 20th anniversary of 1325, essentially the resolution in the Security Council that determined that the protection of women need to be placed at the center of peacekeeping mandates. It's the decade of action towards the SDGs in 2030. Goal 5 really had a central element of that agenda. Is it going to be difficult now for you to build the momentum that you're seeking around these other events that come later in the year?
Well, the momentum is there. There are other events that are planned outside New York, outside the UN, but those events can also be in the same situation.
These are events in Mexico and in Paris later this year, right?
In Mexico and in France. And if the health situation in May and in July is what it is now, I suppose we will have the same situation. So it's not clear. The Bureau opened the possibility to gather at another time, but that is wholly dependent on whether we have a much better health situation.
Essentially, yesterday the Bureau met. Essentially, the CSW Bureau is made up, I think, of 45 member states, and they decided on a one-day event on Monday where a political declaration would be adopted. Other resolutions that have been pre-negotiated will be adopted. You will make an opening statement, the Secretary General, a few others, but there won't be a general debate. And as you mentioned, all these side events that literally take over the precinct and the surrounding areas here. Hotels are fully booked. You run into people from all over Africa and Asia and around the world. That all goes away.
Yeah, and so this year we're even going to have a festival all over New York, which was also going to include engaging the people in the surrounding communities. So what that has also been cancelled.
The question, I think, is what do we salvage now from this one-day event? What can people look forward to come Monday?
You know, this year, the agreed conclusions as they are known to delegates, which take them days and days negotiating when they're here in New York, has already been done. Mm-hmm. And we were doing that in order to give them more time to deliberate about the issues that we have to take forward after taking stock of what has happened in the 25 years of implementing the Beijing Declaration. So that declaration, CSW 64 declaration, was negotiated before it has already been adopted. So on the first day, it is just going to be tabled for adoption.
Is this the same political declaration that generally gets adopted at the end of the 2 weeks, right?
Yeah,
which is always a very fraught process.
So they are not, even if we had a normal CSW and they were all coming, they would have had to just adopt the declaration on the first day. They are not missing out, therefore, on the many days of deliberations
and networking and all that
networking,
kind of stuff.
But they are missing out on the substantive networking that takes place. Mm-hmm. They are missing on the exchanging of experience of activities that countries have taken in the 25 years when they have been implementing the Beijing Declaration. They are missing on the time to strategize about how we take things forward. That is what is missing. And because we have to make sure that we raise the ambition,
right,
that we push back against the pushback, that opportunity is being missed.
Right, and so we're talking about a cancellation and we're talking about a virus, but we're actually not talking about this pushback that you are experiencing. Speak to that. Tell us what this political declaration seeks to do as you now build towards the actual 25th anniversary of Beijing, which will be held in Paris, I believe, in July.
Yeah. Probably one of the most important things this political declaration is doing is to reaffirm the Beijing platform for action, because that too was at risk. So the last few days and weeks of negotiating that declaration was about protecting that declaration. It is a reasonably strong declaration, but it is not necessarily the one that sets out a path that goes forward much further. But it is a do no harm declaration, if I could say it like that. And that is important because it retains the legitimacy of the Beijing platform for action. The coming of civil society here was going to be to fight for an even more ambitious initiatives, plans. Even if they are not in the declaration, they always get picked up by member states, and when they go back home, they raise the ambition.
Well, Under Secretary General, we'll be watching the opening of CSW. It's one-day iteration on Monday. Thank you so much for coming and explaining to us the implications of this decision.
Thank you.
The Executive Director of UN Women, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, talking to us, of course, about the decision taken yesterday by the CSW UNSW Bureau to only have a one-day event here in New York on March the 9th due to the spread of the coronavirus. Of course, the implications of this virus, Tsepiso, are not known, and the gravity really of its spread around the world. Still something to really come to terms with.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our correspondent out there in New York at the United Nations, in conversation with UN Women Executive Director Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.